A long time ago, once upon a time, in a far-off land, and many other well-known opening lines have been setting the stage for folk and fairy tales for hundreds of years now. However, the original stories of Edgar Allan Poe never employ anything less than an instantaneous grab at the heart that almost, but not quite, prepares you for the psychological horror yet to come. As an avid reader and admirer of this great author, ever since reading A Telltale Heart in elementary school, I own multiple copies of his collective works of short stories and poems and have read and studied most of them. A great writer is not only determined by the vocabulary and grammar that they use, but also by the way that they create a living piece of art that lives and breathes with all those who adore it as long as those admirers live. Words that sink into the hearts and minds of the readers for years, decades, and even centuries. Edgar Allan Poe was a great writer and is still beloved by thousands today despite his death in the mid-1800s. I would like to begin with a differentiation between good grammar and good storytelling, and how Poe mastered both of them and used them or didn't use them to his advantage. Then we'll look at his influence over American and European society and how his legacy lives on through his readers. To begin, as a well-educated man, Poe knew the importance of things like sentence structure and the difference between active and passive voice in writing. However, he didn't always use the tools of English in the proper way that he would have been taught in school. For example, in one of his most famous stories, A Telltale Heart, he opens with the line, "True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am, but why will you say that I am mad?" Now, if you talk to many professional writers, they would tell you there are all sorts of things wrong with this sentence, such as the sentence structure, which is a little bit confusing and kind of all over the place, the switching of tenses between past, present, and future, and the word very alone is forbidden and he uses it twice. But despite Poe's educated background, he perfected his ability to make his narrator sound however he wanted, like in this case, absolutely insane. The difference between a grammar freak and a great writer, currently defined as a grammar freak who doesn't always listen to grammar, is what made Poe the legacy that influenced dozens of important historical figures and still keeps him alive today. Thousands of fans around the world keep Poe's short stories and poems thriving, but Poe does not only inspire thought-provoking discussion and spin-offs of his own work, but also influenced other famous authors such as Arthur Conan Doyle and Jules Verne to create more stories and novels for the eager reader. As we can see, Edgar Allan Poe created literature made to impact generation upon generation. Let's recap a couple of these great accomplishments. Poe proved his place as a great writer by creating works of art that have stayed with his fans and those inspired by his legacy. Because of his willingness to break the rules, Poe masterfully works together his and his narrator's perspectives to create a completely new reality. Although no one really knows what happened to this literary genius when he passed on, he will live in our hearts forever. Thanks for watching.